In 1946, Yuri Gusev, a strong master from the USSR, pulled off one of the most incredible queen sacrifices of all times. And this queen sacrifice that I'll show you today is not one of those queen sacrifices that end the game immediately, because probably we have seen many times the queen sacrifice that ends maybe with a checkmate in 4, checkmate in 5, or the queen sacrifice wins then afterwards decisive material, or maybe with the queen sacrifice we create unbeatable endgame pattern, so we have a winning endgame when we maybe sacrifice the queen. No, this wasn't really a queen sacrifice like this, because with this queen sacrifice that Yuri Gusev played, the game was still prolonged. There were so many complications afterwards, so still it was a tough game for both sides. In my opinion, really one of the most beautiful queen sacrifices that I've seen in my life. So I wanted to also, with this game, put my Stockfish 15 engine at home to the test. I really wanted to see, can Stockfish detect this queen sacrifice, because I've seen now many titles about this game which said that the engines have complications to calculate this position that you see now. I really wanted to see if the best engine now these days, Stockfish 15, can handle this position. So in my opinion, really also a very important thing to notice to us, can the engines compete maybe with a game back from 1946. So it's now really a critical moment. So let's see now the game. And I wanted to also talk about Yuri Gusev's career a little bit. He's actually the creator of the so-called Gusev counter gambit. The Gusev counter gambit is a line of the Austrian defense. This is now the Austrian defense of the queen's gambit decline, and after c takes d5, the Gusev counter gambit is now the move knight to f6. So this opening this line we have discussed in one of my studies of the queen's gambit decline, Austrian defense, and you can also check it out. So Gusev was the creator of this kind of a positional line. So here in this game, Gusev opened with the move e4, and we're now skipping to this Immortal game. This is now many times called the Yuri Gusev Immortal. So here after move e4, his opponent Auerbach continued with the move c5, the Sicilian, knight to f3, and after move d6, the modern variation, we have now the open Sicilian with d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight to f6, and after knight to c3, here Auerbach went into the dragon Sicilian. And basically you have now many choices. Gusev went into this more positional line with the move bishop to e2. Usually you're trying to do maybe bishop to c4, bishop to b3, bishop to e3, f3, going into the so-called Yugoslav attack. With this move bishop to e2, Gusev is announcing a more positional game, but believe me, this game will not be positional. This game will be brutal, sick perfect game. So after move bishop to e2, so far it's not so aggressive like maybe the move bishop to c4, but after bishop to e2 here, Auerbach continued with the move knight to c6, normal development. We have now the move knight to b3, releasing a little bit the pressure in the center of the board, so there's no tension now. Here Gusev keeps the game calm. In the continuation, we have now the move bishop to g7, kingside castling, and now bishop to e6. Here Auerbach is preparing the common idea of d5, liberating here the position a little bit, because white has now this dominant pawn on e4, which creates of course also the space advantage now for white. So that's why d5 is the realistic plan, to go immediately to simplify the position. So here Gusev plays now this very aggressive move f4, which is perfectly fine, because this move f4 actually prevents the move d5. d5 is not an opportunity here immediately, because you get f5, and even if you play g takes f5, e takes f5, the bishop has to step back, and I'm not sure. This bishop is a little bit loose on g7. There are attacking chances on the e file. We have a beautiful activity, c5 weak, e5 weak, so bishop to f3, maybe this is weak. So too many positional problems, I think, in black's camp. Black didn't secure the king by castling, so we have now still our space advantage here from white's perspective, the pawn on f5, so still nothing solved here, I think, in black's position. So that's why after move f4, many times black continues with the move rook to c8, so Auerbach played so far the solid line. Here Gusev plays the aggressive f5 move, which is of course not necessary. You can play bishop to e3, king to h1, maybe rook to g1, g4, g5, and similar stuff. You can still attack the king side, but with the move f5, the game becomes already spectacular. The game becomes already complicated. Here, Auerbach continues with the bishop to d7. Now we have g4, which is a preparation actually to play g5 and getting use now of the square on d5. And actually, this move g4 is not so good. Black has some chances to counterplay this move immediately. This is now an aggressive method, and there is a certain rule in chess that says when you get attacked on the flanks that you should somehow attack the center of the board. And here I think Auerbach missed his chances in the game, because this move g4 is in many occasions, I think, problematic, because probably no one wants to face this kind of a pawn storm, and many of us would start to sweat. What should I do? How should I counterplay this position? What should I how should I defend this position? But actually, this is not a problem because of this line. Queen to b6 is actually here the best line. The king, for instance, has to step back, and now you play knight to e5. Now you're simply attacking the position. If now g5 happens, there is now the stunning knight takes e4. This would be the brilliant part of this sequence. Look at this. Actually, the whole position for white is now falling apart, and this is also actually a great pattern how to not push the pawns in front of the kings, because you can also leave some spaces in front of your own king. And look at this, with the move knight to e4, knight takes e4 you can play, but now we have now this idea, g takes f5, the knight has to step back, and now look at this, with the move bishop to c6, the position is so messed up. You have to bring now the bishop in between. Now we play knight to f3, the rook gets pinned, so many dirty ideas. So here after move king to h1, for instance, instead of this move king to h1, you could play maybe rook to f2, but now look at this, with again g takes f5, g takes f5, knight to b4. So there are many chances. Rook to c3 in some lines is also a possibility. So this is, in my opinion, not a good choice here by white. Rook to g8, for instance, also hits the king on the g file. So messed up here position for white for sure. So, but after move g4, here Auerbach didn't play the most correct line. He played knight to e5. He should have played simply queen to b6. Now Gusev plays on his idea with the move g5, knight to g8, forces now the knight to retreat, and of course now he's using the square d5. So it's now a different story here from this point on. Here actually white should be slightly better, but here f6 was played by Auerbach. He's trying somehow to compete now against this pawn storm that's coming to him. Actually, here a better line again is to play the move h6, forcing maybe this kind of a line, knight to d4, and now we can play h takes g5, trading off more pieces on the king side and simplify the game. But okay, let's see what happened. f6 was played by Auerbach. We have now bishop to e3, normal development, hitting also the pawn on a7, so that's why b6, and now knight to d4, getting use of this weak square here on e6. So there are now many structural weaknesses in front of black's king. So here king to f7 was played by Auerbach. We have now the move c3. This is a beautiful move. It's such a subtle move, but it's a beautiful preparation to get the queen on b3, getting use of this light square problems that black is having. Obviously here black has also several problems on the f file, so it's becoming now really a cat and mouse play in white's favor. Of course, from this point on, I think the game is simply beautiful one-way ticket for white here. So after move c3, we have queen to e8. Auerbach recognized that he could have some problems on light squares. He brings now the queen into defense, and now a beautiful, stunning knight hop here with the move knight to e6. What should you do? If you of course ignore this move, then of course this knight is powerful. We can also get rid maybe of the dark square bishop, exploit the dark squares then afterwards. So here Auerbach made the decision to get rid of the knight. Bishop to e6 was the continuation. After f takes e6, the king steps back to f8, because if you play now king to e6, the problem is now, as we said, that's the beauty about this move c3. The queen is coming in a beautiful tactical way into the game. Even if you step back maybe to d7, bishop to b5 is going to happen, and there are several problems here again on light square. So this is not working. So after move f takes e6, Auerbach stepped back here with the king to f8. We have now a stunning knight takes f6. Look at this, what Gusev is doing. He's sacrificing a knight now. He's letting now the position explode on the f file. We have now knight takes f6. After knight takes f6, g takes f6, and the problem is now you cannot take with the pawn. E takes f6 is not an opportunity, because you get this one. Queen to d6 comes with a check. If you play something like queen to e7 covering yourself, then we have this one, queen to e5, and of course you cannot pick up the queen because of the tensions on the f file. So this is not working. This is now obviously completely winning game here for white. So after move g takes f6, you have to pick up now this and piece with the bishop here. Bishop to h6 has to be played now by Gusev. King to g8, and notice with the move king to g8, the king actually locked out now the rook on h8. So the rook on h8 is paralyzed, and also we have to say the king is a little bit paralyzed here on f8. So it's almost like Black is playing now without the whole rook through the whole game. You can really evaluate now this position if you want to, that actually Black is already playing here without the whole rook. So when you think about it harder, when you feel that the rook will not get out of get out in the game, then actually you can maybe even sacrifice one of your rooks. Then still it's almost like you're continuing the game with an extra minor piece, because this rook is not going to get back into the game. So that's why it's understandable what Gusev did here. In the next move he sacrificed the rook for the exchange, because after e takes f6 still we have an extra piece, because we have two bishops against one knight, we have here two rooks, and we have here two queens. But of course this rook is paralyzed. This rook cannot get back into the game. And now after move queen to d6, here the queen is coming in a beautiful way into the game. The problem is now you cannot play something like this, because queen to c6 is going to happen here, rook to c6, and now after rook to d1 you have again problems. You have to play something like rook to c8, but now with rook to f1 there's simply no good way really to defend this position. This pawn is rolling. We have always the opportunity to play bishop to c4, for instance, if the knight moves. So it's again such a messed up game here for Black. In any of these lines, Black is simply helpless. So here in the continuation, after e takes f6, queen to d6, now Auerbach tried rook to c6, which makes really sense. We're attacking now the queen, and the problem is now, for instance, if you step back here with queen to a3, actually this should be a draw. So the problem is now that actually you have only one winning chance, and Gusev saw that immediately. He played now the Immortal here, queen takes e5. So we are skipping now this position, because first of all let's solve this positional problems of queen to a3. Queen to a3 is not possible. Actually it seems tempting, but the problem is, of course, queen to e6 cannot be played. Queen to f8 is winning. It's, of course, a beautiful checkmate. So that's why after move queen to a3, Black will continue here with the move rook to e6. And okay, the problem for White is that actually you can play this kind of idea. Queen to a7, you can threaten, of course, queen to g7, but actually what Black needs to do is just play with the queen to e7, and whatever happens, we're just playing queen to e7, queen to e8, and this should be a drawish position. What Black should not do in this position is try maybe something like this to cover with the rook. If Black covers with the rook, then it's a different story. We can pick up the pawn, and suddenly, actually, White is winning again. So this is really complicated. I'm sorry if I've complicated too much a little bit for you, but now after a couple maybe checks, and now after maybe a couple of threats, if you try now to trade off the queens, actually we can play now queen to e7, rook to e7, now with three connected passers here, with the support of both of these bishops, with the support of the rook. This is completely winning endgame here for White. So that's why, as we said, after move queen to a3, rook to e6, we pick up now the pawn. Actually what Black needs to do is just play with the queen to e8 and with the queen to e7, but the most important thing is that we are protecting the pawn on b6, and this should end with a draw. So as I said, that's why this queen to a3 system, this queen to a3 line, is not working here for White. So this is not working. So that's why Gusev found the Immortal queen takes e5. And you can be my guest now. Put this PGN into your Stockfish 15 engine and try to see if it's seeing this move. Actually, my Stockfish 15 at home sees this move. After a couple of seconds, it sees this actually, because it's really stunning but accurate, really beautiful Immortal queen sacrifice that Gusev played here. Really wild stuff. So actually, Stockfish sees this move, which is, I think, really incredible how also strong the top engines of these days are, because many of us could maybe play this kind of a move and hope for the best. We're just sacrificing the queen for the beauty of the game, but maybe we don't see everything. But actually Stockfish sees everything. This move is so beautiful. This is, as I said, an accurate queen sacrifice. Very wild stuff. After queen to e5, of course, Black needs now to accept the challenge, but now comes the stunning move rook to f1. And this move rook to f1 paralyzes now the queen. The queen is helpless here. If you move ever the queen somewhere, then you get simply rook to f8, and it's a beautiful checkmate. The problem is now you cannot play this idea rook to e6 immediately. This is not working anymore because this bishop is coming into the game. You just can play maybe some pawn moves, but now after bishop to e6, queen to e6, rook to f8 is game over here for black. Really immortal idea here by Gusev. Let's go back to this critical moment after here queen to d6. As we said, rook to c6, and now he sacrificed the queen. So as I said, after f takes e5, rook to f1, threatening always rook to f8 checkmate. But still, the game is so complicated. You see, the rook has to step back because you get also this kind of idea. This is also possible. Bishop to b5, paralyzing the rook. Then we play bishop to c6, deflecting the queen, and then still rook to f8 is checkmate. So that's why here Auerbach has to play rook to c8. But now a beautiful move by Gusev, bishop to d1, with the preparation to play bishop to b3, and then maybe let his pawn roll here on this on the e file, and also create maybe this cover check, maybe also getting this beautiful checkmate with both of the bishops. So that's why here rook to c4 was played by Auerbach. He's now controlling this long diagonal for the light square bishop. After bishop to b3, b5, the only move to survive this attack. And now we are having here already another critical moment of the game. Here actually Gusev didn't react correctly. He played the move bishop takes c4, and this move was rushed. This move is not so good because after b takes c4, here b3 was played, and actually now again Auerbach made the mistake with move a5. What Auerbach should have played is now actually the move c takes b3. We'll come to this position afterwards, but let's see what should have been actually Gusev's continuation instead of this move bishop to c4. Instead of this move bishop to c4, you have to play here now the move a4. a4 is of course trying to deflect the pawn from the defense of the rook. Black needs now to support the pawn on b5, but now we play a very important move h4. h4 is not allowing here black to breathe with the move g5, because here we'll play this stunning move rook to f5, and now with the rook to g5 again the game should be over. So this is really brutal. So the rook cannot ever move whatever we do. So we have always this resource bishop to e6 deflecting the queen, and we have always rook to f8. We have talked about the sequence. So that's why in order, for instance, instead to stay in the game after move a6 and h4, you have to play something like queen to e7. You have to play now just with your queen. But now our idea is to play king to g2. You play again queen to e8. You have only the moves with your queen, and now a very important move rook to f2. Now after queen to e7, now comes the stunning idea bishop to a2. Now after queen to e8, now we play b4, queen to e7, and now after a takes b5, a takes b5, bishop to c4, b takes c4, and now we just launch the pawn. In one moment the queen will be deflected from the defense of the square f8, and then you get checkmated. So really wild stuff. You can maybe try queen to g7, but after bishop to g7 still it's a winning endgame because of this idea. We play e7, and now you can maybe compete with rook to e8, but now again we just push this passer. This rook gets deflected, rook to f8, and then e8 is simply winning immediately the endgame for white. So as I said, this was the way to go. After move b5, we have to play here a4, competing against the pawn on b5. After a6, we play now the move h4, and now after g5, we have talked about this idea rook to f5. So that's why after queen to e7, king to g2, and as we said, the idea is bishop to a2, b4, bishop takes c4, and then we create the passer on the b file. So this is the winning sequence. So that's why here after move bishop to c4, this is not good by Gusev, because after b takes c4, he played now the move b3, but actually this position can be held with this idea, c takes b3. This was the problem, because after a takes b3, here black has this defensive resource with the move a5, and you're trying maybe to get the same idea, king to g2, and you're hoping the queen gets somehow deflected from the square f8, and then we can play checkmate. But actually the problem is now you can only push this pawn, and this pawn can be always cut off here with this potential queen activity. Look at this. You can maybe try to push the pawn to c4, but the queen is always holding this diagonal, is holding the square c5, and it's also holding the square f8. So there's no attacking chance anymore for white. Black is holding with the queen just this diagonal, and this should be a draw. So you see, with the move b3 here, Gusev rushed a little bit. So actually, after move bishop to c4, he rushed here. He should not have played this idea. After bishop to c4, b takes c4, b3 seems tempting because you think you create a passer, you can always deflect the queen, but actually c takes b3 would simply make a draw here for black. So that's why here with the move a5 that Auerbach played, this is not good because it's a different story now. We can play now the move b takes c4. Now again, black is holding the position with queen to e7. Is trying to get some kind of an idea to protect the c5 square, but now here king to g2 was played. We have queen to a3, holding now the position again on this diagonal. Now rook to f2, we have queen to e7, rook to f1. Now we have g5. Even if we play something like queen to c5, rook to f7 is going to happen. This is also something that bothers, of course, black in the continuation of the game. A perpetual, here we have this windmill tactic with rook to g7, and then we create some checks. So this is also something that bothers, as we said, black in the continuation of the game. So you cannot basically defend both of the sides. Very, very incredible attack here by Yuri Gusev. So after move rook to f1, here g5 was played, but now again this idea, rook to f5 with the threat to play rook to g5. That's why g4. We have now this idea, again this deflection motif, c5, the queen gets a little bit overloaded. We have now queen to d8, c6, after queen to e7, c7 in this position. Actually Auerbach resigned. Really, really, really wild stuff. Let's go to this critical moment of the game. After queen to d6, rook to c6, queen to e5 by Yuri Gusev in Immortal. Really brutal queen sacrifice with the idea to get this bishop into the game, to get this rook on the f file, threaten always rook to f8 checkmate. Very one of the most incredible queen sacrifices that I've seen in my life. So as I said, Stockfish solves still this position. So Stockfish is of course our great fellow. Still the engine sees basically everything. There are still positions in which also Stockfish 15 has some complications, especially in blocked out pawn structures. But when it comes to this wild tactical sequences, still the engine sees it. And as I said, you can be my guest. Download the Stockfish 15, put this PGN into the engine and see what's going to happen if Stockfish sees this beautiful tactical sequence. In my opinion, still a great method here by Yuri Gusev. In 1946, he played this kind of an attacking idea. Really, really incredible chess game. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more incredible games like this, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's the link of our whole playlist, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.